darkness. It wasn't the kind that came with night. No, this was older, heavier. The kind that pressed against the bones, that whispered that maybe the sun had given up on rising. Lyra Voss was running, barefoot, bleeding, breathing like the world was trying to drag the air out of her lungs. The rain lashed against her face, cold enough to sting, hot enough to remind her she was still alive. Mud clung to her feet, thick and suffocating, but she didn't stop. Couldn't. Every step was survival. Every heartbeat was a countdown. Behind her, the sound of pursuit, howls, human voices shouting her name, her pack, her own blood, hunting her like an animal. They called her traitor, they called her witch, but they never once called her daughter. Lightning tore the sky open, a savage flash of white revealing the forest around her. Trees like skeletal hands reached for her, branches clawing at her skin. The air was thick, damp, alive with the scent of pine and iron and fear. The forest seemed to move with her, roots writhing, whispering, almost as if it wanted to see how far she'd go before it swallowed her whole. She stumbled, fell to her knees. Her hands sank into the mud, slick and trembling. Blood mixed with earth, her scent would lead them straight to her. "Get up," she whispered, voice shaking. "Get up, Lyra. Don't let them." A sound, close, too close, a growl that didn't belong to any man she knew. She froze. Her silver mark, that cursed shimmer beneath her skin, began to pulse. Once, twice. Then again, harder, like something inside her wanted out. It crawled through her veins, burning. The fire, the same fire that took her mother's life. "No," she hissed, pressing a hand to her arm, as if she could hold it in. "Not again. Please, not now." The forest breathed. The rain quieted, just for a moment, and in that heartbeat of silence, the air shifted. A new presence, not one of her hunters. Something older, wilder, watching. Then, a roar. It wasn't from the pack. It wasn't even from this world. It was deep, ancient, vibrating through the ground, rattling her teeth. Every instinct screamed run, but her body wouldn't move. The fire under her skin trembled, like it recognized that sound, like it knew it. She staggered backward until her spine hit a tree. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Her heart drummed against her ribs. Her eyes darted through the shadows. The storm flashed again, and in that instant of white light, she saw them, eyes, not one pair, dozens. Silver, gold, crimson, all watching. The forest had teeth tonight. She turned and ran again, crashing through the undergrowth. Her feet tore open on stones, branches sliced her arms, but she didn't stop. The sound of pursuit came again, closer, faster, desperate. One voice rose above the rest. "Lyra, stop!" She almost faltered. Almost. She knew that voice. She'd once trusted it, but trust had burned out of her long ago. She kept running until her lungs screamed, until her vision blurred. The world tilted. The trees became shadows and whispers and rain. Her body was failing, but something deeper, something primal, refused to let her fall. The mark on her arm glowed, faint and silver, illuminating the dark. Her curse, her inheritance, her secret. Then she saw it. A ridge, a cliff overlooking the valley. The ground below shimmered faintly, silver veins running through the rock like liquid moonlight. She could almost hear it humming, calling, the same way it did when her mother died. She reached the edge just as her pursuers broke through the trees behind her. Torches, snarling faces, eyes full of hate. "Don't move," someone shouted. "Monster," another voice cried. "End it before she burns us all." The rain hissed as it struck the firelight. Steam rose around them, ghostly and unreal. Lyra's breath came in short, broken bursts. Her hands trembled at her sides. The mark on her arm pulsed again, brighter now, reflecting in the eyes of the men who used to call her kin. "I didn't want this," she said, voice barely audible over the storm. "I never wanted any of it." "Too late," one of them spat. "You carry her fire. You carry her sin. Her mother's name, unspoken, but heavy in the air. Sin, curse, witch. All the same words they used the night her mother died screaming under a blood moon. Lyra took a step back. The edge of the cliff crumbled under her heel. The world below seemed endless. And in that fragile moment, something deep inside her whispered, "Jump or burn." But before she could decide, the roar came again, closer, louder. The ground trembled beneath her feet. The torches flickered, the wind screamed, and from the shadows of the forest came a shape. Tall, broad, cloaked in darkness. A man, and yet not. The others froze, their anger dissolving into fear. The stranger's voice carried through the storm, low, calm, commanding. "Enough." The pack turned. "Stay out of this, Alpha," one of them shouted. "Alpha." The word struck her chest like thunder, but this wasn't her pack's Alpha. This was someone else. His scent was unfamiliar, his energy heavier, colder. He moved with the kind of control that came from power born, not given. "Leave her," he said. "She's under my protection now." Laughter broke from the pack. "Yours? You don't even know what she is." He stepped forward. Lightning split the sky again, revealing his face. Dark hair plastered to his temples, jaw cut from stone, eyes burning gold like sunlight through smoke. And those eyes, God's, those eyes, locked onto her as if he'd known her his whole life. "I know exactly what she is," he said, "and she's not yours to hunt." The words silenced the storm itself. Lyra stared, breathless, disbelief etched into every tremor of her body. Who was he? Why did he look at her like that, like he saw her soul burning through her skin? The pack hesitated. Even fear had a smell, and he could taste it on them. With one final growl, they retreated, fading into the darkness from which they came. Then there was silence. Only the sound of rain, only the sound of her heartbeat, wild, uneven. He took a step closer, slow, deliberate, his gaze never leaving hers. "You shouldn't be out here alone," she flinched. "I didn't ask for your help." "I didn't offer it," he said, "but I'm not in the habit of watching someone die." Lightning cracked again, revealing the silver mark still glowing faintly beneath her skin. His gaze dropped to it. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, and something else. Sadness? Fear? "You bear the mark," he murmured. Her voice shook. "You know what it means?" He nodded once. "It means you're not the only one cursed." For a moment the world seemed to stop spinning. Her breath caught, and the forest, that restless, whispering forest, seemed to listen. His name was Ronan Vale, and in the heartbeat that followed, destiny shifted. The air around them changed, heavy, electric, full of something neither of them could name. Because fate, cruel as it was, had a habit of binding two broken souls under one unforgiving moon. You're listening to Wild Moon Narratives, where love, power, and destiny collide beneath the full moon. Subscribe now, and stay until the last heartbeat. The moment hung, sharp and breathless, the kind that stretched between one heartbeat and the next, the kind that decided who lived and who didn't. Lyra didn't breathe, couldn't. Every instinct screamed danger, but the forest had gone utterly still. Even the rain seemed to pause mid-air, as if the world itself waited to see what would happen next. Then, from the shadows beyond the ridge, came movement, silent, fluid, enormous. A black shape cutting through mist and moonlight. A wolf. No, not a wolf. Not like the ones who'd chased her through the woods. This one was bigger, broader. Its fur shimmered like midnight smoke, each muscle rippling beneath its coat. When it moved, the ground seemed to bow beneath its weight, and its eyes, God's those eyes, they burned like molten amber, glowing with intelligence far too human, far too knowing. Lyra stumbled backward, her pulse hammering in her throat. The silver mark on her arm flared hot, as if it recognized him before she did. Her breath hitched, and for the briefest second, she thought she saw something flicker in those golden eyes. Recognition, grief, hunger. The wolf growled once, deep, resonant, powerful enough to vibrate through her bones. The air trembled around them, thick with electricity and the scent of rain and earth. Her pursuers froze where they stood, their bravado bleeding into silence. One dropped his weapon, another took a trembling step back. The massive beast turned its gaze toward them, lips curling to reveal white, deadly teeth. The sound that followed wasn't just a growl, it was a promise, a warning. Run. And they did. One by one, the men scattered, their torches dropping into the mud as they fled into the forest. The storm swallowed their screams, their footsteps fading into nothing. Lyra was left alone on the ridge, breathing hard, rain slicking her hair to her face. The wolf turned back to her, silent, still. For a moment she thought he'd vanish, that he'd melt back into shadow and mist, leaving her to face whatever came next alone. But instead, the creature began to change. Bones shifted beneath fur. Muscles tightened and broke apart. The sound, low, grinding, too human, echoed through the clearing. The rain hissed against steam rising from his body as fur gave way to flesh. And when he finally stood before her, naked and trembling beneath the dying storm, Lyra forgot how to breathe. He was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, his skin a patchwork of scars. Some old, silvered by time, others fresh and angry, clawed across muscle and sinew. His hair was dark and wild, falling across a face that looked carved from shadow and grief. And those eyes, the same molten amber, locked onto hers like gravity. "You shouldn't be here, Lyra." Her name on his lips. Her name. Spoken like a secret. She staggered back a step, confusion slicing through her exhaustion. You know me." He didn't move, didn't blink. The rain had slowed, steam curling from his skin where heat met cold. "I know your scent," he said quietly. "It carries the mark of flame." Her throat tightened. "You shouldn't—" He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "You're bleeding." "I'm fine." "You're not." He reached for her arm. She flinched. His hand hovered mid-air, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, but not touching. He was giving her a choice. It had been a long time since anyone had done that. Lyra swallowed hard, her heart caught between fight and collapse. Every instinct screamed to run, to disappear before this stranger with the wolf's eyes saw too much. But something in the way he stood, still waiting, steady as stone, disarmed her. So she nodded once. He touched her, and the world changed. It was like the forest itself exhaled. The wind stirred. The air hummed. A spark flared beneath her skin, where his fingers brushed the edge of her mark. It wasn't painful. It wasn't even hot. It was recognition, a pulse that said, "I see you." She pulled back sharply, breath catching. His jaw tightened, but he didn't move to stop her. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Ronan Draven," he said, voice low, heavy with something unspoken. "Alpha of the Obsidian Pack." Her stomach dropped. She'd heard that name before, whispered in the kind of tone reserved for monsters and myths. "The Obsidian Pack doesn't cross into the Veil," she said. "Not usually." "Then why are you here?" He hesitated. The muscles in his jaw flexed once before he spoke. "Because you're not supposed to exist." Her breath faltered. "What?" "You carry a power that shouldn't be walking this forest. That mark—" He nodded toward her arm. "It's not a curse. It's a call. Every shadow in these woods will hear it." "I didn't ask for it," she snapped. "I didn't ask for any of this." Ronan's expression softened, just barely. Power doesn't wait for permission. Lightning flashed between them, and in that brief, searing instant, their eyes locked. The storm lit the edges of his face, the curve of his jaw, the scar along his throat, the sharpness in his gaze. And beneath it all, something she didn't understand, something ancient. Recognition. not the kind that came from memory, but from the soul. He took another step toward her, closing the distance inch by inch until the air between them trembled with energy. She should have stepped back, should have run, but she couldn't. There was something magnetic about him, something that made her want to lean closer, even though every sane part of her screamed to stay away. "You've been running from them," he said, "but you're really running from yourself." Her lips parted, words trembling on the edge. "You don't know me." "I know that look," he murmured. "I've seen it in my own reflection." The silence that followed was thick, dangerous, intimate. Rain pattered softly on the leaves above them, the last remnants of the storm whispering away. Lyra's pulse thrummed beneath her skin. She hated that his voice felt like gravity. Deep, patient, pulling her in even as fear knotted her gut. "Why did you help me?" she asked finally. His gaze didn't waver. "Because I couldn't watch you die." She frowned. "That's not an answer." He almost smiled, not with amusement but with the weary ache of someone who'd forgotten how to. "No, it's not." For a long moment they stood there in the hush after the storm. The forest smelled of wet earth and something electric, ozone and fire and something older. The kind of scent that warned of destiny creeping close. He offered her his hand. She looked at it like it was a weapon. Rough, scarred, steady. The kind of hand that could crush bones. Or protect. Her mind screamed, "Don't." Her heart whispered. Lyra hesitated, every nerve alive with conflict. Then, slowly, almost against her will, she reached out. Their fingers touched. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't gentle. It was raw, real. A jolt of recognition, sharp enough to steal her breath. The silver mark on her arm glowed faintly, where his skin met hers, and his eyes widened just a fraction. Enough to know he felt it too. The world tilted around them. Something unseen shifted, old as the moon, binding them in silence neither could explain. And as the storm drifted away, leaving only mist and heartbeat and breath, Lyra realized something terrifying. For the first time since her mother's death, she wasn't afraid of the dark, not while he was standing in it. You're still listening to Wild Moon Narratives, where every heartbeat hides a secret and every story burns beneath the skin. Stay close. The night's just getting started. Night came softly to the mountains. A bruised violet sky pressed low over the trees, whispering secrets through the wind. Somewhere below, water murmured over stone, and above it all, in the skeleton of a forgotten watchtower, Lyra Voss sat by the faint flicker of a dying fire. Her hands were trembling. They always did when the world went quiet. Ronan sat a few feet away, silent, unmoving, a dark silhouette against the faint silver light leaking through a crack in the wall. His presence filled the space, calm but heavy, like the weight of unspoken things. He hadn't asked why she ran. He hadn't demanded thanks. He just followed her when she stumbled through the forest, half dead and terrified, and when she collapsed at the threshold of this ruined tower, he'd lit the fire wordlessly. Now, as the embers hissed and cracked, Lyra stared into the flames and saw them. The past she couldn't bury, the smell of burning flesh, the sound of her mother screaming her name, the chant of her pack, "Witch, witch, witch," growing louder until the night itself seemed to cry out in their voices. It had been raining that night too. She remembered how the water hissed against the pyre, how her mother's eyes, wide, wild, desperate, met hers through the flames. And then came the fire. Not from the torches, not from the pyre, from her. The silver mark on her palm had blazed to life, hot enough to sear through rope and bone. The next breath was chaos, screams, heat, light swallowing everything. When the world cleared, her mother was gone. The ground was scorched, and the only one left standing was Lyra. That was the night she stopped being a daughter and became a curse. She blinked hard, dragging herself back to the present. The fire before her was small and harmless, but her hands shook as if she was still burning. Tell me, Ronan said quietly. His voice broke the silence like the edge of a blade through still water. Low, steady, too calm for the storm that had built in her chest. She didn't answer. Couldn't. He waited. Didn't push. Just watched her, eyes reflecting the faint light, sharp but unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice came out hoarse. They said I was born wrong. Ronan tilted his head slightly, a small motion that somehow demanded truth. Lyra swallowed hard. My mother was human. My father wasn't. They said she seduced him, the alpha of the Silverfang line. Said she bewitched him. When he died, the pack turned on her, and when they saw what I could do, she laughed, sharp and broken. They didn't even need proof, just fear. He didn't look away. I ran, she whispered. I didn't stay to see the ashes. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I smell smoke, and I wonder if it's still burning. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was listening. Ronan leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. The firelight caught the scar along his throat, a deep, jagged mark that cut through the line of his jaw. He didn't hide it. He didn't explain it. But when he spoke again, his voice carried the same ache she felt in her own bones. You think fire makes you dangerous, he said. It makes you alive. She blinked. Alive. He nodded once, slow. Fire doesn't destroy on its own. It reveals. It burns away the rot, the lies, the weakness. It shows what's left when everything else is gone. Lyra's lips parted, breath catching. And what if there's nothing left? Ronan's eyes met hers, steady, unwavering. Then it's time to build. The word struck something deep, something she hadn't realized was still there. That small, desperate flicker that wanted to believe she could still be more than the monster they said she was. But belief was a dangerous thing. She turned away, jaw tight. You don't know what it's like, she said. Everyone I've ever trusted ended up fearing me, using me, running from me. He didn't move, didn't defend, just let her words hang in the space between them until they burned themselves out. Finally, he said, I do know. Lyra frowned, glancing over her shoulder. He was still staring into the fire, his expression unreadable. But his hands, the same hands that had steadied her hours ago, were clenched tight, veins standing out against his skin. My brother, he began, voice low, roughened by memory. He believed in the prophecy, said the moon would choose a new alpha, one born of darkness and light. He thought it would be him. A pause, the kind that carried a graveyard's worth of silence. He tried to force the change, Ronan said, tried to take the power before it was ready to choose him. Lyra's breath caught. What happened? Ronan's eyes lifted to hers. He died screaming. The fire popped between them, sparks jumping in the air. And your father? She asked softly. Ronan's mouth twisted, not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. He followed my brother into madness, convinced the moon goddess would bless his line again if he spilled enough blood. He was wrong. There was no bitterness in his voice, no self-pity. Just the truth. No. She realized then that every scar on his body was a map of loss. They sat in silence after that, the kind that doesn't demand words, just breathe, just being. Outside, the wind howled through the ruins, carrying the faint scent of rain and pine. The firelight flickered across their faces, painting them in gold and shadow. Two broken souls caught in the same flicker of fate. Lyra's voice was barely a whisper when she spoke again. You should have let them kill me. Ronan turned his head slowly. Is that what you want? She didn't answer. He studied her for a long time, his gaze searching hers. Not with judgment, but understanding so deep it hurt to meet. No, he said finally. You don't want to die. You want to stop running. Her breath stuttered. And what if I can't? She whispered. Then you let someone run with you. His words settled like embers in her chest, small, fragile, warm. Lyra looked away quickly, trying to hide the crack forming in her defenses. "You talk like you know me." He gave a faint smile, more shadow than light. "Maybe I do." Something in his tone made her heart twist. Familiarity, recognition, like the echo of a song she'd once known. And for the first time, she wondered if fate had drawn her to him, or back to him. The thought unsettled her. She pushed to her feet, pacing the edge of the tower. The stone was cold beneath her bare soles. The night pressed close, silver light spilling through broken archways. "I shouldn't be here," she murmured. "You said that before," Ronan replied, "and it's still true." He stood too, slower this time, movements deliberate. "Then why haven't you left?" Her heart stumbled over the answer. Because she didn't know. Because she couldn't. Because every time she looked at him, she saw pieces of herself reflected. The parts she'd buried, the ones that still wanted to be seen. "I don't trust you," she said finally. "You don't need to." He took a step closer. "But you should trust yourself." The air shifted. The fire dimmed. The wind slipped through the cracks in the tower and brushed against the back of her neck like a warning. She turned toward the window and froze. In the valley below, the forest glowed faintly, not with fire, with moonlight. Silver threads of energy pulsed through the trees, converging at a single point deep in the heart of the woods. The air vibrated with a hum so low she could feel it in her bones. "What is that?" she breathed. Ronan's voice dropped to a whisper. "The moon's call." He stepped up beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. The contact was brief but grounding, a tether between what was real and what wasn't. "That light," he said, "comes once every century. It calls the market, those chosen by prophecy." She felt her mark burn beneath her sleeve, the silver glow seeping faintly through the fabric. "No," she said softly. "No, I'm not." Ronan turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You are. I didn't choose this." "Neither did I," he murmured. "But here we are." The light from the valley pulsed again, stronger this time, a heartbeat of the earth. Lyra's breath came fast, her pulse raced to match it. For a moment she imagined her mother's voice, soft, distant. When the moon calls, the blood remembers. Her vision blurred. The tower walls seemed to melt around her, replaced by shadow and flame, and the faint ghostly echo of wolves howling. And in the flicker of that moment, she saw them, visions. A woman crowned in silver fire, wolves bowing, a kingdom drowning in red light, and a single name whispered by the wind, Lyra of Flame. Her knees buckled, the world tilted. Ronan caught her before she fell, his arm strong and steady, holding her like something precious and volatile all at once. Her eyes fluttered open. What did I see?" He didn't answer immediately, just looked down at her, at the silver glow still shimmering faintly along her skin. "The truth," he said finally, "of who you are." Lyra's pulse thudded in her throat. "And what is that?" Ronan's gaze darkened. "The one the prophecy spoke of, the child of fire." The balance was reborn. She stared up at him, shaking her head. No, that's not. I'm not." His hand cupped the back of her neck gently, grounding her. "You are, Lyra." Tears welled in her eyes, hot, angry, scared. "Then what am I supposed to do with that?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. The fire sputtered and went out, leaving them in darkness lit only by the glow of her mark, silver, steady, alive. And in that haunting light, two broken souls stood on the edge of destiny neither had chosen. But both could no longer deny. You're listening to Wild Moon Narratives, where love meets prophecy and fire learns to breathe. Stay close. The mark has only begun to burn. The night was too still. Even the forest seemed to know what was coming. Lyra's mark still glowed faintly through the sleeve of her torn shirt, each pulse syncing with her heartbeat. And with something else, something older, deeper. Ronan moved ahead, his steps silent despite the gravel and roots. The alpha of the obsidian pack moved like shadow itself, guided not by sight but instinct. He didn't speak and didn't need to. The bond between them, though unspoken, hummed with the weight of destiny. Lyra followed close behind, clutching her wrist, trying to smother the silver light radiating beneath her skin. But the harder she pressed, the brighter it burned. The air shimmered faintly around her, heavy with power that wasn't fully hers. Yet. They descended through the trees into a narrow ravine veiled in mist. The scent of wet earth and ancient moss filled her lungs, grounding her even as her pulse quickened. "This place," she whispered. "It feels alive," Ronan finished, his voice low, reverent. "It remembers." Ahead, the ravine widened into a clearing carved by time and moonlight. Stone pillars rose from the earth, half swallowed by vines and silence. On each one, symbols, curved, fluid, burning faintly like veins of silver beneath the rock's surface. Lyra slowed, her eyes wide. The symbols pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Ronan," she breathed, "they're reacting to me." He turned to her, the faintest glint of awe in his eyes. "Then it's true." "What's true?" "That your blood carries the moon's promise." Her pulse stumbled. "The moon's promise?" Ronan stepped closer to the nearest pillar. His fingers brushed the stone, and a faint vibration rippled through the ground. "Long before the packs divided," he said softly, "there was a prophecy." The moon made a vow that when darkness rose again, she would awaken a child of flame and balance, the one who would choose what survives and what burns. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. "You think that's me?" He turned, eyes meeting hers, steady, unflinching. "I don't think, Lyra. I know." The moment his words hit, the ravine shuddered. The stones began to hum, the vibration deepening until it resonated in her chest, in her bones, in the space between her breaths. She staggered back, clutching her head. The mark on her palm flared white-hot, searing, alive, as if something beneath her skin was trying to break free. "I can't," she gasped. Ronan was at her side in a heartbeat, hands gripping her shoulders, grounding her. "Breathe, Lyra." But she couldn't. The air around her had turned electric, alive with light and memory. The glyphs blazed brighter, and the mist coiled upward, forming shapes, wolves bowing beneath a bleeding moon, mountains collapsing under fire, rivers of silver turning crimson. Then came the voices, whispers, hundreds of them, layered and ancient, not from the air, but from the stones themselves. "Child of flame, balance reborn. The moon remembers her promise." Each word struck her like a pulse through the veins of the earth. She saw flashes of faces she didn't know, wolves she'd never met, all kneeling beneath a burning sky. Her vision tilted, the ground fell away, and suddenly she was elsewhere, floating between two worlds, one drenched in silver light, the other drowned in red fire. She saw herself standing at the threshold, her hands outstretched, one glowing with the moon's light, the other dripping with blood. Behind her, two armies, wolves and shadows, both waiting for her command. Her voice, distant yet unmistakably her own, echoed through the void. "Only one can survive." The sky cracked open, fire met moonlight, and the world screamed. Lyra's body convulsed. She fell to her knees, gasping. The vision shattered, leaving her in the clearing again, shaking violently. Ronan caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her against his chest. The scent of him, pine, smoke, storm, filled her lungs, anchoring her back to now. Her eyes were wide, unfocused. "It's ending," she whispered. "Everything." Ronan's grip tightened. "What did you see?" She swallowed hard, voice trembling. "Wolves bowing. Fire swallowing the sky. A crown of light floating in blood. And me, standing between it all." Ronan's expression darkened. Did you see who wore the crown? She shook her head. It wasn't me. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. Then, from somewhere beyond the ravine, a low, resonant howl rose through the night. It wasn't from any pack Lyra knew. It was older, deeper. The sound made her blood run cold. Ronan stiffened. No. Lyra turned toward the sound. What is that? He looked out toward the mountains, toward the direction the howl had come from, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw fear flicker behind his eyes. The Shadow King, he said quietly. He's waking up. The ground beneath them shuddered again, harder this time. Cracks spidered through the stone floor of the ravine. The glyphs flickered wildly, pulsing faster and faster until the entire clearing glowed like a heartbeat. Lyra pressed a hand to her mark. Why now? What's happening? The prophecy, Ronan said. The call of the moon woke you, and in doing so, he glanced at the trembling forest. It woke him too. The air thickened, pressing against her chest. The light from her mark flared once more, spilling silver radiance across the stones. And in that light, for just a second, she saw a figure. Tall, cloaked in shadow, his eyes burning crimson. He stood at the edge of the vision, watching her. Waiting. Her voice broke. He saw me. Ronan's grip tightened around her arm. Then he knows the prophecy's real. The earth groaned beneath them. The light dimmed. The stones cracked, releasing a low, resonant hum that rippled through the valley like the growl of a sleeping beast. Lyra stumbled backward, breath ragged. I saw his face. What did he look like? Like me, she whispered, but older, darker. Ronan's gaze sharpened. Your bloodline. She looked up at him, realization dawning, terror mixing with recognition. My father's death, my mother's silence. They weren't accidents, were they? He didn't answer. Lyra's voice shook. Tell me, Ronan. The Alpha met her eyes, the truth cutting through his silence. No. They were warnings. Her knees nearly buckled again. From who? He hesitated. From the moon herself. The air was still. The light dimmed. The forest went utterly, painfully silent. Then, a whisper, not from the world around them, but inside Lyra's mind. He rises when balance breaks. And the child of flame must choose. Her breath hitched. Choose what? The whisper faded. Ronan took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Whatever you saw, whatever comes next, you're not alone. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to hold on to the warmth of his voice, the steadiness of his touch. But the vision still burned behind her eyes, fire consuming everything, and her own reflection standing amidst the ruin, holding both crown and flame. I don't think I have a choice, she said softly. He brushed his thumb across her cheek, wiping away a streak of ash she hadn't realized was there. You always have a choice. Lyra exhaled shakily, the weight of destiny pressing against her ribs. And what if the wrong choice kills us all? Ronan's jaw flexed. Then I'll die beside you. Her heart stumbled. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath again. Just the two of them, standing in the ruins of a prophecy, the moonlight catching the faint shimmer of tears on her lashes. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. You weren't meant to face this alone, Lyra. Whatever this is, we face it together. Her lips parted, trembling. Together? Until the last moon falls, he said. The ravine quieted, the stones dimmed, the last hum of the ancient glyphs faded into silence, as though the earth itself had accepted a vow. But far beyond the valley, in the cold heart of the mountains, another sound rose, low and relentless, the Shadow King's awakening, the first heartbeat of the end. You're listening to Wild Moon Narratives, where every vow has a price, and destiny is never gentle. Stay close. The Shadow King has only begun to stir. The night after the ravine was colder, quieter in that dangerous, unnatural way that made even predators hold their breath. By dawn, whispers had spread like wildfire through Ronan's pack. The Alpha had brought home a stranger, a woman marked by a silver flame, and with her, the curse. The obsidian stronghold, usually alive with the sound of wolves training and children laughing, now pulsed with low growls and uneasy glances. The air was thick with suspicion, distrust, and something darker. Ronan stood at the edge of the council ring, shoulders squared, jaw set. The scars along his forearm caught the dim firelight, stark reminders of every war he'd fought to protect these wolves. But now, they didn't look at him as their protector. They looked at him as a traitor. Lyra stood a few paces behind, half in shadow. The hood Ronan had given her couldn't hide the glow beneath her skin. Faint, pulsing light tracing the mark on her palm. She tried to dim it, to contain it, but the more she hid, the more it demanded to be seen. The beta, Corin, stepped forward. His voice cut through the silence like steel. "You've brought the cursed one into our home," he said, every word sharp with venom, the witch who burned her own kin. A ripple of growls moved through the circle. The pack was restless, fear sharpening their instincts, turning loyalty into doubt. Ronan's gaze didn't waver. "She's not your enemy." "She carries the mark," Corin spat. "Do you think we've forgotten the stories? The last time the silver flame walked among wolves, it turned them to ash." Lyra's breath hitched. Shame, that old familiar ache, crawled up her throat. But before she could speak, Ronan's voice rumbled low and deadly. "Enough." His tone silenced even the boldest. The storm of murmurs broke against the wall of his authority. Corin sneered. "You'd risk the safety of your pack for her?" Ronan stepped closer, his presence filling the space. "I'd risk everything to stop what's coming, and she's part of that fight, whether you accept it or not." A tense pause, and then the first raindrop fell. It hit the dirt with a soft hiss, then another, then 1,000 more. Within seconds, the forest erupted into a downpour, but beneath the rain, another sound stirred, faint at first, then growing louder, a low guttural snarl that didn't belong to any living wolf. Lyra froze. Her eyes darted toward the tree line. The shadows moved, unnaturally fast, bending and reforming like smoke given shape. Ronan turned sharply. "Positions!" Too late. The first creature burst from the darkness, a beast of liquid shadow, its eyes two burning coals in a body made of teeth and mist. It hit one of the guards before he could shift, dragging him screaming into the black. Chaos exploded. Wolves shifted mid-step, fur and claws flashing in the rain. The air filled with howls, roars, and the sound of tearing flesh. Ronan shifted in a blur. The massive black wolf she'd seen that first night, his fur slick with rain and silver eyes blazing. He leapt into the fray, colliding with one of the shadow beasts. His claws sliced through smoke and bone, but the creature reformed, hissing, its form rippling like liquid. Lyra stumbled back, heart hammering. The mark on her palm pulsed harder now, frantic, alive. She looked around, wolves falling. The pack collapses under a tide of nightmares. Ronan bleeding, surrounded, something inside her broke. The air thickened, her vision tunneled, the world narrowing to Ronan's struggle. His claws tore, his teeth bit, but for every shadow he killed, 2 more rose. She felt the fire surge through her chest, wild, instinctive, desperate. Not now, she told herself. Not again. But the fire didn't listen. When the next beast lunged for Ronan's throat, her body moved on its own. She screamed. The sound cracked through the rain like lightning. And then the world ignited. Silver flame burst from her hands, spiraling outward in a blinding arc. The blast tore through the clearing, vaporizing the shadows in an instant. The air shimmered with heat and light. Rain hissed into steam before it touched the ground. For a heartbeat, silence. Then, a single voice whispered, awed and terrified. She burned them. Lyra stood in the center of the devastation, trembling, her hair plastered to her skin, silver light fading from her palms. Around her, wolves stared, some frozen in awe, others in fear. The bodies of shadow beasts had melted into black smoke that coiled up and vanished. The air reeked of ozone and charred earth. Ronan shifted back, panting, blood running down his side. He looked at her, not with fear, but something rawer, grateful. She opened her mouth, voice small. "I saved you." But before he could respond, Corin's voice cut through the rain. "No," he snarled. "You doomed us." He pointed a trembling hand toward her. "You saw it. She called that fire from the void. The same fire that destroyed her pack. It's the curse reborn." A chorus of voices rose behind him. Fear spreads faster than reason. "She'll destroy us. She's the end of the prophecy. Kill her before it's too late." Lyra flinched, each word hit like a blade. Ronan stepped between her and the pack, his voice booming over the storm. "Enough. You owe her your life." But his words only fueled their rage. Wolves bared teeth, claws scraping dirt. Their eyes glowed with the madness that came when fear overpowered faith. Lyra's pulse raced, her vision blurred. All she could see were their faces, twisted in hate, in terror, the same faces she'd seen the night her mother burned. Not again, not again. She stumbled backward, shaking her head. "I didn't mean to." Ronan reached for her. "Lyra," but she was already turning, the forest calling her like a heartbeat in her blood. The mark on her palm flared one last time, then dimmed. She ran. Through mud, through rain, through the cries of wolves she'd almost begun to trust. Branches tore at her skin, her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. The sound of their voices still echoed behind her, a chorus of betrayal she couldn't silence. When she finally collapsed in the shadows of the forest, she didn't cry. She just stared at her hands, trembling, stained with light, and whispered into the storm, "I saved them." Her voice cracked. "So why do I feel like I've lost everything?" Behind her, far away in the clearing, Ronan stood alone. His pack circled him, demanding answers. His baiter's voice carried through the rain. "She's cursed, Ronan. You know it." Ronan didn't answer. His gaze lingered on the forest, on the trail she'd vanished down. "She's not cursed," he said quietly. "She's ours." Corin snarled. "Then you're no alpha of ours." And with that, the circle broke. The pack turned their backs on him. And Ronan Draven, once the strongest alpha the Obsidian Wolves had ever known, was left standing in the storm, alone, his loyalty torn between his people and the woman who had just saved his life. You're listening to Wild Moon Narratives, where even salvation burns. Stay close. The next heartbeat could change everything. Ronan finds her 3 nights later. He hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. He followed the faint silver scorch marks along the cliffs, each one a wound in the world, a trace of her passing. The further he climbed, the colder the air became, biting through his skin, turning his breath to mist. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. When he finally found her, she was little more than a shadow against the stone. Curled beside the mouth of a shallow cave, her body trembled with fever, silver light faint beneath her skin. Dim, flickering, fading. "Lyra." His voice was rough, stripped down to a whisper. She stirred, barely. The fire that had once roared in her now looked like dying embers. He dropped to his knees beside her, brushing the wet strands of hair from her face. Her skin burned against his touch. "Ronan." Her voice was a rasp, fragile, like she didn't quite believe he was real. "I've got you," he murmured. "I've got you." He lifted her easily, too easily, and carried her inside the cave. His body blocked the wind as he knelt beside the wall, laying her gently against the cold stone. The air smelled of snow and iron. She was shaking so hard her teeth clattered. He tore the fur from his shoulders and wrapped it around her, then stripped off his tunic, using the fabric to bind the burns along her arm. Every movement was careful, reverent, as if one wrong touch might shatter her. When the fire finally caught, a small stubborn flame sputtering in the dark, he sat beside her, watching her breathe. Her eyes fluttered open. Why did you come back?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because I couldn't not." A faint smile ghosted across her lips. Brief, bitter. "You should have left me. Your pack is no longer my pack," he interrupted softly. "They made their choice." Silence. The fire cracked between them. Lyra turned her head, eyes glinting in the flickering light. "And what choice did you make?" He leaned back against the stone, his voice low, thoughtful. "To follow what feels true, even if it kills me." Her gaze lingered on him, searching. "And does it feel true? Me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out, fingers tracing the edge of the bandage he'd wrapped around her wrist. She flinched, instinctive, but didn't pull away. "You're burning up," he murmured. "Always," she said softly with a hollow laugh. He smiled barely. "You think that's a curse?" Her eyes lifted to meet his. "Isn't it?" The firelight danced across her face, highlighting every bruise, every mark left by fear and survival. There was nothing delicate about her beauty. It was sharp, dangerous, real. He didn't look away. "No, it's power. You just haven't learned how to live with it yet." She studied him. "You talk like you understand." "I do." His voice roughened, that quiet edge of pain that made her chest tighten. "Once, I loved a woman who taught me what power really costs. She wanted the alpha's throne, not the man sitting on it. When she realized she couldn't have both, she chose the throne." Lyra's breath caught. He gave a small, humorless laugh. "I told myself I'd never trust again, never open that part of me to anyone. But then you came, fire and ruin and all the things I swore to stay away from. And somehow—" His eyes met hers. "Somehow I started breathing again." She turned her face away. The words hurt, too raw, too close. "You don't want this," she whispered. "You think you do, but I destroy everything I touch." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Then let me be the one who survives you." The air between them tightened, thick, electric. She could feel his heartbeat, steady against the silence. Feel the heat of him seeping through the cold. Her hand trembled as she lifted it. The mark on her palm glowed faintly, casting silver light across his chest. "If you touch me," she said, voice unsteady, "you'll regret it." "Maybe," he said, "but right now, all I can think about is how your voice sounds when you say my name." Her breath hitched. He was close now, too close. His scent surrounded her, wild and grounding all at once. Pine, smoke, blood, rain. She didn't know when her defenses began to crumble, only that she was tired of running from something that already lived in her. Their hands met first, cautious, trembling, his calloused fingers against her trembling ones. The connection was small, but it felt like the world shifted around it. "Can I trust you?" she whispered. He looked at her, eyes silver, unblinking, sincere. "You already do." The words settled between them, quiet, dangerous, true. For a long heartbeat, the world held still. The cave, the storm, the prophecy, all of it blurred, fading to nothing but the space between their breaths. Her gaze dropped to his lips. His thumb brushed her cheek, gentle, questioning. She didn't pull away, and just as their mouths were about to meet, the mountains screamed. A distant howl, deep, resonant, ancient, cut through the silence, shaking the air itself. The fire wavered. Shadows crawled along the cave walls, forming shapes that didn't belong to either of them. Ronan's eyes snapped open, the softness gone. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless. Lyra drew back, pulse racing. "They found us." He rose, already reaching for his blade. "Not them." He tilted his head, listening. "Something else." The howl came again, closer this time, layered with voices. Not one creature, many. Lyra's mark flared against her will, reacting to something ancient and dark, moving beyond the mountain walls. She could feel it, that same pulse that had haunted her dreams since the prophecy. The Shadow King was awake. Ronan turned back to her. "We have to move." She struggled to her feet, leaning on the cave wall. "You can go. I'll only slow you down." He growled, a low feral sound that made her heart stutter. "Don't ever say that again." Her lips parted, but before she could respond, he stepped close, gripping her arm, steadying her. His voice was quiet but unyielding. "We run together. Or not at all." The fire guttered, dying as a cold wind swept through the cave. Snow swirled around them, carrying whispers that weren't wind. Lyra's pulse beat against the mark in her palm. The power wanted out, to burn, to defend, to destroy. But she held it back, teeth clenched, afraid of what she might unleash again. Outside, the world darkened, clouds swirling unnaturally fast, lightning tearing the horizon apart. Ronan took one last look at her, at the woman whose fire had turned his world inside out, and said, "Stay behind me, no matter what happens." She nodded, her throat tight. They stepped out into the storm. Side by side, two fractured souls bound by something neither could fully name. The snow hissed as it hit the ground. Shadows moved at the edge of sight, crawling closer. The sound of claws against stone echoed through the ravine. Lyra's breath came in shallow bursts. "They're hunting us." Ronan's jaw tightened. Let them try. And so the hunted become the hunters, the cursed and the broken, bound by fire and moonlight. But trust is fragile, and destiny never waits. The dawn after the storm wasn't dawn at all. It was red, the color of blood spilled and promises burned. They'd run for 3 days, hunted by wolves that were once called Ronan Alpha. But the trap wasn't teeth and claws. It was silent. Silence in the forest, silence in the wind. And then, steel. The ambush came just before dusk, swift and merciless. Silver nets shimmered in the dying light, slicing through branches and air. Ronan's snarl split the night as he tore through the first line, but there were too many, too organized. And then he saw him, Taran, his beta, his brother in arms, his betrayer. The man's eyes gleamed with something colder than loyalty. "I warned you, Alpha. She's poisonous." Lyra stumbled back, chest heaving. The air around her shimmered with heat. The mark on her palm pulsed like a warning heartbeat. "Ronan," she whispered, voice breaking, "don't." But before she could finish, the blow came from behind. Silver dust flooding her lungs, numbing her limbs. Her knees buckled. The world tilted sideways. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Ronan's face. Horror and helplessness carved into something that looked like love. When she woke, the world smelled of smoke and incense. Chains bit into her wrists. Silver burning cold. She hung suspended in the center of a stone courtyard, moonlight spilling down like judgment. The blood moon, full, red, unmerciful. Around her, the High Council of Alphas stood in a perfect circle. 12 figures cloaked in black fur, their faces half shadow, half disgust. At the far edge, Ronan stood among them. He didn't look at her. The council's seer stepped forward, a frail old man whose voice could cut through bone. "Lyra Voss," he intoned, "bearer of the silver mark, you stand accused of witchcraft, murder, and the awakening of the old curse." Lyra's voice was hoarse but steady. "I didn't choose this." The seer ignored her, turning to the gathered alphas. "The prophecy speaks. When fire rises, the alphas fall. When the moon bleeds, the cursed flame will devour the world." Murmurs rippled through the circle. The crowd, warriors, pack members, elders, pressed closer, their whispers sharpening into hate. "She burned her own mother alive. She brings ruin. She is the end." Lyra closed her eyes. Every word was a dagger she'd already been stabbed with before. But one voice she wanted to hear, needed to hear, said nothing. Ronan. He stood unmoving, expression unreadable. His jaw was tight, hands clenched at his sides. His wolf burned behind his eyes, but his body stayed still, controlled, obedient. The seer turned to him. You brought her here. You claim to have harbored her. Tell us, Alpha of the Obsidian Pack, do you still deny her guilt? The silence that followed was a blade suspended over her heart. Ronan's voice came low, measured, breaking something inside her. She's dangerous. The words echoed through the hall. For a moment, Lyra couldn't breathe. Her pulse thundered in her ears. He didn't meet her eyes, couldn't. The seer nodded. Then the judgment stands. By the blood of the moon, the cursed flame shall be extinguished. The chains tightened, drawing her arms higher, forcing her to her knees. Her throat closed. Rage and sorrow tangled in her chest like thorns. So that's it, she rasped. You'll kill what you don't understand. The seer raised his staff, voice rising to a chant that made the very stones hum. By moon's decree, let her fire die. The chains glowed white-hot. Lyra screamed as the silver dug into her skin, the mark on her palm blazing brighter, defying the spell meant to contain it. And then, something inside her broke. It wasn't the chains. It wasn't her body. It was the part of her that still believed she was meant to be saved. The pain inverted, became power. The courtyard trembled, the torches exploded. Flames spiraled from her skin, silver white and furious, reaching higher than the moon. The council stumbled back, shielding their faces as the heat devoured the night. Ronan moved before he could think, cutting through the chaos, his body between her and the onslaught. Lyra, he shouted, stop! But she couldn't, wouldn't. The ground split open beneath them, molten light bleeding through cracks in the stone. The temple began to crumble. You chained me, she screamed, voice splitting with grief. You made me believe I was a monster, so I became one. The fire consumed the dais, swallowing everything in its path. Ronan reached her, caught her wrists, burned his palms doing it. Listen to me. You'll die if you keep going. Tears mixed with sweat on her cheeks, hissing as they hit the heat. You chose them? No. His voice cracked. I chose you. That's why I stood there. Because if I defied them, they would have killed you before you could speak. But it was too late. The flames roared, deafening, blinding. The temple's great columns fractured, raining fire and stone. He pulled her into his arms and leapt through the collapsing archway, just as the roof gave way. The explosion behind them painted the sky in molten light. When the world finally stopped shaking, they were outside, breathless, burned, alive. Smoke rolled across the valley. The temple was gone. Lyra staggered to her feet, ash clinging to her hair. Her body trembled, not from exhaustion, but from heartbreak. Ronan reached for her. Lyra, please. She flinched from his touch like it was fire. Don't, she whispered. Her voice was raw, hollow. You can't save me, Ronan. You never could. He tried again, voice breaking. I didn't betray you. She cut him off. You didn't have to. Her mark flared, one final, brilliant pulse of silver light. And then she was gone. Gone into the forest, into shadow, into legend. Ronan fell to his knees in the ashes, the scent of smoke and her still burning in his lungs. Behind him, distant howls echoed, not of grief but of fury. His pack, his people. Traitor, one voice hissed through the dark. He didn't turn, didn't fight. He just stared at the ruins and whispered the only truth left in him. She chose me once, he murmured, and I failed her. The blood moon sank lower in the sky, washing the valley in dying red. The ashes rose around him like snow, and somewhere far beyond the mountains, a single silver flame still burned, fierce, untamed, and free. Love doesn't end when the world says it should. It lingers, in scars, in silence, in the shadow between forgiveness and fire. But fate never lets go that easily. The mountain did not welcome her. It tested her. Every step Lyra took bled through the snow, the prints glowing faintly, silver fading to red. The wind screamed around her, cutting at her skin like glass. Her cloak had burned away long ago. Her body was a map of what she had survived. Burns, scars, frostbite, and the soft shimmer of power awakening beneath the surface. The peak loomed ahead, jagged and black, wreathed in storm. The moon hung low, swollen, its light spilling like molten silver over the rocks, and at its center, the altar, the same stone her mother had died upon. She stopped. For a long moment she simply breathed, slow, ragged, alive. The whispers had been calling her since she fled the ruins. Now they spoke in full voice. "Come, child of flame." She raised her eyes, and the world shifted. The air thickened, no longer cold, but humming. The storm froze mid-motion, the snowflakes hung suspended in the air, glowing softly. The moon seemed to bend closer, its light cascading into a single column that struck the altar like the breath of a god. And there, rising from that brilliance, the figure she had seen in dreams, the moon goddess. Her form was neither woman nor wolf, but something between. A silhouette of light, eyes like galaxies, hair flowing like a river of stars. When she spoke, her voice came not from the air, but from inside Lyra's bones. "You were never cursed, child. You were chosen." Lyra fell to her knees. The mountain trembled beneath her palms. "Chosen?" she whispered, her voice breaking with years of disbelief. "To destroy everything I touch?" The goddess's gaze softened. "To end what began before time. To burn away the corruption that fed upon the hearts of your kind." Lyra shook her head. "You don't understand. I've been killed. I've lost everything. They hate me. Her breath caught. "He chose them over me." A faint smile, sorrowful, eternal. "Did he? Or did you run before you let him prove you wrong?" The words hit her harder than any blade. Lyra's hands trembled. The fire beneath her skin pulsed, restless, aching to break free. "Then why me? Why the flame? Why make me this way if all it brings is ruin?" The moon goddess lifted a hand, and the snow around them ignited, not into flame, but into memory. Images whirled through the light, wolves kneeling before thrones, packs tearing each other apart, the Shadow King rising from the ashes of ancient war, a beast made of smoke and bone, its eyes twin voids. "He was the first Alpha," the goddess said, "the one who sought to cage the moon herself. When he fell, his soul broke into 12 pieces, each bound to a bloodline. Each Alpha since has carried his hunger for power. Even those who swore to protect the light." The images shifted, Ronan's face, his eyes burning gold, the mark of the obsidian line carved faintly across his chest. Lyra's pulse stuttered. "He carries it too. All do. But only one was born to unmake him." Her gaze fell to Lyra's palm, the silver mark now blazing with threads of flame that licked up her wrist. "You, Lyra Voss, daughter of the silver flame, blood of the forgotten moon. You are not his curse. You are his ending." The world went silent. The storm died. Even her heartbeat seemed to stop. Lyra looked down at her hands, trembling, the light bleeding through her skin like a sunrise breaking through cracks of stone. "I don't want to be a weapon," she whispered, "then be a fire that chooses where it burns." The goddess's words rippled through her like heat, like truth. And then, she reached forward, touched Lyra's chest. The world ignited. Pain, no, rebirth, consumed her. Her breath caught in her throat. Her body arched, suspended in air as silver flame poured from every pore. Her scream echoed through the mountains, part agony, part awakening. The flame didn't burn her this time. It broke her, in the way a cocoon breaks when wings are ready. Her wolf surged forward, howling. But this time it was not separate. Not a beast behind her ribs. It was her. Her body stretched, shifted, bones snapping, reforming. Fur of molten light rippled across her skin. Her eyes flared like twin moons, half fire, half moonlight, the alpha of flame. The storm burst outward in a ring of energy, shattering the ice, making the entire mountain groan like an ancient beast waking. Rivers below lit up, glowing silver in her reflection. The howl that followed rolled across the valleys, ancient and primal. Every wolf for miles dropped to its knees without knowing why. The ancestors sang, low, haunting, beautiful. Lyra stood at the summit, chest rising, her breath now mist and embers. The moon hung above her, brighter than it had been in centuries, and within that brilliance, the goddess's voice faded, soft but clear. Your fire is not the end, it is the beginning. Then she was gone. Silence fell again, but it was a different kind of silence. Not emptiness, not exile. Power. Lyra looked down at her hands, at the light weaving between her fingers like a living flame. She closed her fist around it and exhaled. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel cursed. She felt complete. Then the ground shook. A sound rose from the valley, low, guttural, ancient. It wasn't the cry of any living wolf. It was deeper, older, a voice made of shadows. The Shadow King had awakened. His darkness spilled through the forest like oil, devouring starlight, swallowing the river's glow. The night screamed, and standing at the edge of the mountain's path, Ronan. His clothes were torn, his face marked with blood and ash. His golden eyes locked onto her, filled with awe, fear, and something painfully human. Love twisted by fate. Lyra, he breathed. She stepped forward, her fire dimming into a simmering halo. You shouldn't be here. I couldn't let you face him alone. You think standing beside me will change what's coming? He shook his head. No, but it might change me. Her lips parted, but no words came. For a heartbeat, they simply stood there. The alpha of flame and the alpha of shadow's bloodline, caught between destiny and choice. The mountain rumbled again. The horizon split with dark lightning. Lyra turned toward it, the air around her thick with silver heat. If I face him, I may die. Ronan's hand brushed her arm, gentle, grounding. Then die as who you are, not what they made you. She looked at him, really looked. The scars, the exhaustion, the faith still buried somewhere in his gaze. A faint, aching smile touched her lips. Then promise me this. If I fall, you'll remember me as I am now. He nodded once, jaw tight. I will remember. Always. She took one final breath, the air trembling with her power, and stepped forward. Each stride cracked the ground. Flames flared beneath her feet. The wind howled her name. Lyra descended the mountain, not as a fugitive, not as a cursed woman, but as something reborn. Fire and moonlight, walking side by side. The wolves below lifted their heads, drawn to her scent, their instincts bending to her presence. And in the valley beyond, the Shadow King rose, a vast silhouette of darkness and bone, crowned in smoke. His voice rolled across the world, ancient and mocking. So, the child of flame returns. Lyra's eyes glowed white-hot. Not a child, she said. A reckoning. The ground split between them, rivers of light and shadow colliding. And in the center, where the moon met flame, destiny held its breath. Every story burns toward a choice, between fear and fire, love and ruin. She had chosen. The world would never be the same. The world is still. Smoke clings to the horizon, curling into the wounded dawn. The air tastes of ash and silver, of something ending and something ancient beginning. The mountains lie scarred, their peaks shattered where flame met shadow. Rivers once black, with the Shadow King's corruption now run clear, catching faint glimmers of moonlight even beneath the sun. It is quiet, too quiet. For the first time in centuries, there are no howls echoing through the forests, no war cries, only the slow rhythm of survival. At the heart of what was once the battlefield stands Lyra. Her body trembles, not from weakness, but from the cost. The power that had roared through her veins now flickers like dying embers, soft and human again. Her hair, once haloed in flame, hangs in damp strands, streaked with soot and moonlight. Her eyes still burn faintly silver, but behind that glow lives exhaustion so deep it cuts to the soul. She is barefoot. Blood paints the ground beneath her feet, mingled with shadow and light, the remnants of what she destroyed. Before her lies the place where the Shadow King fell, a hollow crater of blackened earth, pulsing faintly, as if the world itself remembers his rage. The scent of ozone and decay lingers, heavy as grief, and beside her, Ronan. He kneels, his head bowed, one hand resting on his thigh, the other pressed to the earth as though swearing an unspoken vow. His skin is marked with burns where Lyra's flame touched him, yet he does not flinch. The burns have already begun to heal in strange, luminous patterns, veins of light threading beneath his flesh, like veins of molten silver. He raises his gaze to her, not as an alpha, not as a warrior, but as a man stripped bare of all pride and title, standing in awe of what she has become. No crown, no chains, just devotion. Lyra, he whispers, her name breaking like prayer. It's over. She doesn't answer. Her gaze is fixed on the horizon, where smoke still rises in the distance, where the light is too bright and too clean, where she knows peace will never come easy. The packs have gathered below the ridge, scattered and bloodied, the survivors watching from afar. None dare approach, their eyes shift between reverence and fear, caught between kneeling and fleeing. They do not know what she is now. Savior, monster, alpha, flame, all of it and none of it. The wind stirs her cloak, or what remains of it, tattered and lined with ash. Her fingers twitch at her sides, as though unsure whether to reach for Ronan or hold herself together. The silence stretches. Then she speaks, her voice soft, hoarse, but carrying through the stillness like the whisper of prophecy. They bow, she says, her tone unreadable, not because they understand, but because they fear what they cannot name. Ronan rises slowly, his shadow falling across hers. They saw what you did. You freed them. Freed? Her laugh is quiet, bitter, broken. You think freedom is what they see when they look at me. He takes a step closer. Then tell me what they see. Her eyes flick toward him, molten and fragile, the storm behind them barely caged. They see what the legends warn them of, the fire that ends alphas, the witch who kills gods. Her voice falters. They see a curse, Ronan, not a savior. He reaches for her hand. She lets him take it, but her fingers stay limp in his grip. Let them see what they will, he murmurs. You and I, we know the truth. Do we? She asks, searching his face as if it holds the answer. Do you know who I am now? Ronan's jaw tightens. He draws her closer until their foreheads almost touch. You are the woman who faced death and burned it away. You are the reason we're still breathing. Lyra's eyes flicker. Not with fire this time, but with something painfully human. Regret. And if the next alpha rises and calls me abomination, if your council hunts me again, then I stand beside you, he says simply, as I should have before. Her breath catches, a fragile sound in the broken dawn. For a heartbeat, everything feels suspended again. The world, the past, even the tremor in her chest that has nothing to do with power and everything to do with the man standing in front of her. But the moment doesn't hold. A breeze shifts, carrying the scent of blood and burnt earth. Lyra steps back, breaking the contact. Her gaze drifts once more to the horizon, endless, aching, uncertain. The packs below begin to stir, some kneel lower, others turn away. One by one they melt into the mist, leaving only silence in their wake. Lyra watches them go. They'll rebuild, Ronan says, his voice quiet. The world always does. And what of us? She asks. He hesitates, the kind of hesitation that speaks of wounds too fresh to name. I don't know, he admits. She nods once as though she expected nothing else. Then perhaps that's the first honest thing either of us has said since this began. Her words hang between them, soft but sharp enough to draw blood. The sun crests the ridge then, painting her in light that flickers across the lingering flame in her eyes. Her power hums, subdued but not gone, the heartbeat of a force that will never again be silent. She exhales, long and weary. Then slowly she turns, not to Ronan, not to the packs, but to us, to the listener. Her gaze finds the unseen, as though through the veil of story she can see the hearts that have followed her rise and fall. Her voice, when it comes, is no longer a whisper of battle, but confession. Intimate, aching, utterly raw. Would you have chosen me, or feared me too? The silence that follows feels like judgment. The air thickens, charged with unspoken truth, the kind that presses on the chest and refuses to be ignored. Lyra tilts her head slightly, eyes narrowing, searching for the answer that will never come. Am I savior, or cursed? The last word trembles, not because she doubts her strength, but because she still, even after everything, fears the answer. The wind stirs again. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. One note, low and mournful, fading into the morning light. Ronan turns toward the sound, but Lyra keeps her eyes on the invisible horizon, the place where the listener's heart beats in rhythm with hers. She draws in one final breath. Her lips curve, not into a smile, but something fiercer, something alive. It doesn't matter anymore, she says softly, because I will burn until the world learns to see the light in its own fire. And so ends the tale of Flame and Moonlight, of the cursed and the chosen, of the alpha who loved her enemy and the woman who became legend. But stories don't die. They smolder. The wind carries her name through the valley one last time, Lyra Voss, and the echo burns through the heart like the ghost of a promise. If this story lit something inside you, the voice says now, intimate, conspiratorial, breaking the fourth wall with a whisper of heat, then don't let it fade. Subscribe to Wild Moon Narratives, because here, a pause, a smile in the dark, we tell tales that burn. The world breathes again, but not in peace. The ashes of the Shadow King's fortress still smolder, black dust curling into the night sky, painting the clouds in streaks of ember and grief. The land quakes softly beneath the ruin, as though the world itself is mourning, restless, unable to sleep. The moon, once full and silver, dims. A shroud of shadow bleeds across its face, swallowing the light piece by piece. The wind changes. It no longer smells of victory, but of warning. Somewhere in the stillness, something ancient stirs. Beneath the rubble of what was once the Shadow King's throne, a pulse begins. Faint, deliberate, rhythmic, like the echo of a heartbeat long forgotten. The ground trembles, dust drifting from cracked stone, the faint sound of whispering rising like the memory of a prayer. She is not the only one born of flame. The voice is low, distorted, neither male nor female, a resonance older than time itself. It slithers through the air like smoke, coiling around the ruins, searching, tasting, remembering. For a moment, it sounds almost reverent, almost afraid. Then silence again, a silence that feels wrong. The shadows lengthen, bleeding together until the fortress itself seems to sink into darkness. The fire that had once destroyed everything now looks small, a flicker against the vastness of what lies beneath. Cut to a far horizon, a land untouched by Lyra's fire, yet trembling under the same moon. There, on the edge of a crimson desert, stands another woman. The sky above her burns red as blood, streaked with lightning that never fades. Her cloak whips in the dry wind, dust swirling at her feet like ghosts. Her eyes, sharp, glowing amber, mirror the storm behind her. In her palm, the same mark blazes, not silver, gold. It flares like molten sunfire, wild and alive. The light spreads across her skin in veins of molten heat, tracing the outline of her jaw, her throat, her heart. She doesn't flinch, doesn't look away. Instead, she lifts her gaze to the darkened moon and smiles. The sound of her breath is steady, controlled. Finally, she whispers, the first flame has fallen. Her words carry like a curse. Around her, the desert trembles, dunes shift, the air hums with unseen energy. From the horizon, shapes begin to move, silhouettes that walk like men but cast the shadows of beasts. Eyes flash from the storm, dozens of them. The woman tilts her head, the mark on her hand pulsing brighter. The balance breaks, she murmurs, and the fire spreads. The wind picks up, scattering embers through the air. But these are no embers of Lyra's moonlit flame. These burn darker, hungrier. Somewhere deep in the world's bones, something answers. A growl, low and ancient, rolls across the desert like thunder. The woman closes her eyes, feeling it vibrate through her blood. Let her think she ended it, she says softly. Let them all believe. Her eyes open again, glowing like liquid gold. Because the true alpha hasn't risen yet. The moon completes its eclipse. The world falls into shadow. Time itself seems to hold its breath. In that silence, the pulse beneath the earth grows louder. Once, twice, 3 times. Then, a howl. Not of grief, not of victory. Something older, something calling. It rises from deep beneath the world, from the places where even gods have forgotten to look. It echoes across mountains, across oceans, across the hollow shells of ruined temples. Every creature that hears it stops. Every wolf, every alpha, every human touched by the moon freezes. Hearts thrumming with instinct, with fear. Even in death, the Shadow King's essence stirs. His ashes scatter on the wind, forming whispers that twist into words only the night can understand. This isn't over. The wind howls. The stars flicker. The dark grows teeth. Somewhere far from battle, deep in a cave where moonlight dares not reach, a single ember glows. It pulses faintly, like a sleeping heart. For a moment, it seems innocent, no bigger than a spark from a forgotten fire. Then it shifts, expands, breathes. The cave fills with warmth, not comforting, but consuming. A figure moves within the light, faint, spectral, feminine. Not Lyra, but she looks like her. Her voice, faint as wind through glass, whispers, "You cannot kill what was born to return." The ember flares, filling the darkness with violent brilliance, a flash of white gold that sears itself into the air before vanishing as if it never existed. When the light fades, the cave is empty. But outside, far above, the first wolf of the New Age lifts its head and howls. The sound pierces the night like a knife. Every heart that hears it feels the echo of destiny stirring again. The moon turns red. The world trembles. And somewhere, beneath fire, beneath shadow, beneath every scar left by gods and monsters, something awakens. The story is not over. It never was. Because every end is just another form of beginning. Every flame, once extinguished, seeks a new place to burn. A single sound cuts through the dark. A howl. Low, mournful, but defiant. Not Lyra's, not Ronan's. New, unknown, and yet familiar. It carries across the wasteland, through the forests, across the broken temples and sleeping seas, the sound of legacy being reborn. The wind catches it, carrying it toward the horizon where dawn waits, unknowing. She only sleeps between their stories. And when she wakes, the world remembers what it means to burn. Then, one last whisper, so soft it feels like it's coming from inside the listener's own chest. This isn't over. To hear what happens next, stay with Wild Moon Narratives, because the moon never forgets her children. and her stories never truly end.